Hi, I'm Graham INSCOE, and today for D&D Backstory, we're going to be taking a look at Ydres Eltal. The epitomic huntress, Ydres is fierce and utilitarian, calculated and cold in demeanor, but fiery at heart. A woman who assesses the potential danger in new faces before they even register her gaze upon them, whose every movement is made with the subconscious, purposeful grace of a predator. Having watched the she-wolf who raised her bleed out and having been driven from her family and her home, Ydres is certainly a player character who is slow to let her walls down or to let people in. But she will protect those who have shown her kindness or those she is deemed to be innocent with icy fury and ruthless precision. She's a tireless predator, a peerless tracker, and a deadly foe. But she is also a young woman, thrust into a world she is unfamiliar with without her only family to lean upon. Ydres, as a character, provides a unique opportunity for DMs and prospective players. We know she was abducted from her home as a small child, and we know that the great she-wolf of Lethir rescued her and raised her and loved her as her own. But why was Ydres taken in the first place? Where does she come from? And do these questions hold any meaning for Ydres? Talk to your DM about any ideas you might have and want to incorporate into the greater campaign. Were her parents successful merchants or nobility of some sort? The child of lesser royalty? Or even the daughter of commoners, grabbed in a case of mistaken identity without her kidnappers ever realizing? And now that she has been forced to flee Lethir and return more or less to the prime material plane and a world of humanoids, does she wish to seek out her past? To seek revenge against those that killed her mother? Or to strive forward and find a new family to protect and call her own? A Wood Elf Ranger in the classic MMO mold, Ydres focuses primarily on providing large amounts of sustained weapon damage at a long range, as well as some limited party support and emergency healing. As such, Dexterity is her highest priority stat, followed by Wisdom and then Constitution. Strength was chosen as the dump stat for this build, but Intelligence and Charisma could also be chosen based on player preference. In regards to skill selection, the Outlander background provides Athletics and Survival. And from the Ranger list, we're also selecting Investigation, Nature, and Stealth. And thanks to her Elven heritage, Ydres also picks up proficiency in Perception by default. Choosing the Archery fighting style to increase the chance to hit on Ydres' main weapon is almost a no-brainer, but you may want to ask your DM about the Unearthed Arcana Close Quarters Shooter fighting style, which enables you to ignore penalties for shooting with a hostile creature within 5 feet of you, and to ignore half and 3/4 cover within 30 feet of Ydres. Rangers in their current incarnation have a lot of either-or choices built into their character creation, so in building Ydres, we looked for options that both benefited her mechanically and stayed true to her as a character. Favored enemy was chosen over favored foe. Beasts and monstrosities were selected as her 2 starting types of favored enemies, simply based on the most common threats she would have encountered in the shaded corridors of Lethir. Players should base their third choice on enemies they've run into across the campaign thus far, but aberrations and undead are usually 2 safe bets for getting decent mileage out of the feature. If your DM has made it clear that another type of enemy might be a major threat in the campaign, don't be afraid to ask them about giving Ydres some in-game hints about it to inform your choice. We opted for Deft Explorer over Natural Explorer simply due to the fact that Natural Explorer is very hard to predict. A ranger might go an entire campaign without setting foot in their favored terrain at all, and having class features that never get used just isn't fun. At level 3, Ydres picks up the Fey Wanderer subclass. This grants a no-cost, consistent boost to her damage dealt with her attacks, and additionally offers her some new utility outside of combat, allowing her to add her Wisdom modifier to her Charisma checks, as she funnels some of the magic of the Feywild to enhance her charm. Likewise, Primeval Awareness is applicable in almost any setting and useful for confirming the presence of numerous types of creatures that are usually bad news. At her 4th level ability score increase, the Sharpshooter feat becomes available, which is an essential tool, enabling Ydres to sacrifice some accuracy for a massive increase to her damage, as well as increasing her effective range. At 5th level, Ydres gains her extra attack, and through Fey Wanderer, she gains access to Misty Step, which opens up her mobility drastically, whether used to position herself high above the battlefield or to escape a grapple or other perilous situation. At level 7, she gains the Beguiling Twist ability, allowing her to turn a charm or frighten effect back upon an enemy when she or an ally saves against it. At level 8, Ydres just increases her dexterity by 2, adding to her attack modifiers, armor class, and initiative rolls. Finally, at level 10, Nature's Veil is chosen over Hide in Plain Sight. Invisibility on a bonus action is just infinitely more useful than taking a minute to apply stationary camouflage, especially since the latter can be replicated, but better in a fifth of the time by combining the Wood Elf feature Mask of the Wild and the spell Pass Without Trace. Important to remember is that this invisibility is not broken by casting a spell or making an attack. When Ydres gains access to spellcasting at level 2, her bread and butter combat strategy comes online. Tag your first target with Hunter's Mark, and then fill them with extra damage arrows until they fall. Ydres is never going to rely solely on her spellcasting for her best performance in combat. However, there are a fair number of spells on her list that allow her to use her limited spellcasting to increase her own lethality or to severely hinder her enemies. Hunter's Mark, which adds an extra d6 of damage to Ydres' attacks against the target, is a first level spell that Ydres is going to get mileage out of well into mid or even high tiers of play, as is Cure Wounds. Ydres is never going to thrive as a dedicated healer, but being able to pull an ally out of death saves is invaluable. Absorb Elements also scales well into the late game, but in early levels, big chunks of elemental damage are less common, so this spell might be worth waiting on to take at a later level. Finally, for our main first level considerations, Entangle and Ensnaring Strike both restrain enemies, but the chance to snag multiple enemies with Entangle usually outweighs the d6 of single target damage done with Ensnaring Strike. Zephyr Strike is a decent mobility tool, but Ydres is about to automatically gain an even better, more versatile mobility spell, so Zephyr Strike is less appealing to her than it might be to other rangers. At second level, we find a lot of viable options. Healing Spirit is a wildly efficient healing spell, potentially healing multiple allies over multiple turns. Pass Without Trace is a massive boost to your whole party's stealth, and it's always good to have at least one party member capable of casting Lesser Restoration. Thanks to Fey Wanderer, Ydres inherently has access to one of the best second level spells in the game in Misty Step, and if your party has good ways of forcing back and forth movement from enemies, Spike Growth can be a brutally efficient way of shredding through enemy HP. On the flip side, Cordon of Arrows looks cool, but is highly situational with a low damage potential and should be avoided. The third level ranger spell list is full of similar traps. Conjure Barrage and Flame Arrows are both simply too weak to justify a third level spell slot. Lightning Arrow is marginally better, but there are still almost always better things to concentrate on and save your spell slots for. The one must-have third level ranger spell is Plant Growth, which provides an incredible amount of battlefield control against any and all ground-based enemies, and can even be stacked with Spike Growth or Entangle. Conjure Animals is also a very strong spell, but it's one you'll want to talk with your DM about ahead of time. Because of the wording of the spell, a DM may or may not allow you to select what kind of creature you summon, and may or may not expect you to have any or all of your summoned animal stats ready to go when you cast the spell. Moving up to fourth level spells, we find even fewer viable options, especially when they're competing against Dimension Door, courtesy of Fey Wanderer's expanded spell list. The exception to this is Conjure Woodland Beings, and though this is potentially one of the strongest spells in the Ranger's arsenal, it was left off of Ydres' list intentionally. Summoning pixies and adding 8 allied spellcasters to the battlefield is an incredibly effective strategy, but it is also one that is guaranteed to bog down combat for minutes and minutes, and is likely to induce boredom in other players and headaches for Ydres' player and the DM both. Make sure to talk with your DM ahead of time before adding this spell to your list. As a decent consolation prize, Guardian of Nature can be used to grant Ydres a variety of small buffs, most notably advantage on all of her bow attacks. Finally, if one gets the chance to select 5th level spells for Ydres, Swift Quiver will double the amount of attacks she can make in a turn for 10 rounds of combat, only situationally more beneficial than Guardian of Nature's advantage. And Tree Stride provides a truly insane amount of mobility, provided, of course, that one has lots and lots of trees nearby. And that about sums it up. We hope that this video has provided some insight into how and why Ydres was built the way she was, and how to get the most out of her in regards to both mechanics and roleplay. Make sure to like and subscribe for more ready-to-play characters and mechanical breakdowns, and come yell at me in the comments about why you think Flame Arrows is really good, actually. Thanks for watching! If you'd like to support our channel and gain access to some other fun D&D Backstory content, you can find the link to our Patreon in the description. To find all of our other characters and how-to videos, head over to the channel by clicking D&D Backstory below.